Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Good Monday morning to you all. Hope you guys are getting up and feeling well out there this morning and having a great start to your day. Got you an update on what's going on with the weather for today, and then, of course, we're going to give you an update on what's going on with the nor'easter. We'll give you some updated information. We're not going to get as detailed as last night's video. It's very hard to certainly get that detail in every video. That video took a while to put together, but I'm glad it helped you folks. Appreciate all the nice comments from you folks up in New England, the Northeast, and I really appreciate all the support from that area of the country. It means the world, so definitely want to mention that. But we're going to talk about the nor'easter right at the beginning of the video. Then we're going to talk about the rest of the U.S. as we always do in the morning. And then, at the very end of the video, I'll briefly mention the next storm system that we're going to latch on to, and this could be a big another winter storm, another big rainmaker, and potentially a severe weather maker for areas of the South coming up a little bit later this week. So we'll talk about that. We'll start to break that down and kind of switch to that as, I don't go live during these storms. I wish I would. I would love to go live during this nor'easter, but that is, plans for the future for you folks that's been watching for a while. You know that is some plans of mine. But I don't go live during these events. Would love to, but certainly there's a lot of great people who do. But we'll keep on pumping out the information for you guys and staying ahead of these storms, which typically is what we do on this channel. But if you folks have not subscribed, certainly consider doing that. Like the video if you like it. It helps to get these videos out there. And if you guys got anything that I can pray about or pray over, as always, please put it in the comments below so I can pray over it and so others can do so too. Let's get rolling this morning. Wider vapor loop. So all this deep convection is really kind of came off the coast of the Southeast and the Mid-Atlantic, and you already got moisture that's overspreading into areas of New Jersey, New York City, even southern sections of New York State, even into sections of eastern and northeastern Pennsylvania. This will continue to become widespread across the southern New England area and then the Northeast just in general. Everywhere else, what we're going to watch is some energy right here that will fire off some kind of, you can call it snow squalls. I definitely think we're going to have some bursts of snow, but it's going to be kind of a wintry day across the Ohio Valley, portions of the Midwest. We're going to get some snow showers that probably make it as far south as maybe the Cumberland Plateau today. It's certainly possible, so don't be surprised or shocked from that at all. We look at watches and warnings. So you see this kind of dark purple right here? That is freeze warnings. I told you guys the cold was coming. We weren't done with winter. And I still think even after this, we're not done with winter. I think that we're going to get more freezes after this as we get into a little bit later into March. But kind of the lighter blues here, that's freeze watches. I certainly think tonight some of these areas in the blues will get upgraded to freeze warnings. But we got anywhere from 2 to as much as 4 nights ahead of us where we're going to get below freezing for a lot of areas in the Mid-South and Deep South and Southeast. We go up here into the Northeast, which is our big storyline here. Winter storm warnings from the Poconos, the Catskills, Litchfield Hills, the Valley, Hudson Valley, the Berkshires, the Worcester Hills, there's 3 distinct ways to pronounce this based off everybody who's commented, and everybody who comments is pretty confident that's the way to pronounce it. So I'm gonna just go with Worcester Hills. If that does bother anybody, I do apologize. I know y'all take that kind of serious up there, and we kind of do too. We have a town called Lancaster here in South Carolina, and some people call it Lancaster, and some people call it Lancaster. So I totally get it, but we're just gonna stick with one and roll with it. We're just gonna say Worcester and try not to sound out that O so much. But there's a lot of people who said that, so Worcester. We'll roll with Worcester Hills. All right. So we'll keep going, still hanging on to winter storm watches in Boston. Last night we talked about 8 to 12 inches in Boston from the National Weather Service. I don't think you're going to get that much snow in Boston. That's just a gut feeling, and I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but that's my gut feeling here. You don't have anything upgraded to winter storm warnings here, and kind of the lower elevations of kind of central to north central Connecticut into kind of the south central sections of Mass, if that's a thing. And that's because you're just lower elevation. Anybody that has just a little bit more elevation than another area. I'm talking about, if you're sitting at about 500 feet, you go somewhere that's about 1,200 to 1,500 feet, man, you could have several more inches of snow in this kind of setup. Okay. But temperature's not as big of a deal once you get out here. But winter storm warnings up all the way from, Syracuse, Binghamton, Albany, the Poconos, Scranton, winter storm warning. So winter storm warnings up for 4 counties in northern New Jersey, but nothing issued for Long Island or New York City. As of right now, winter storm watch is up for the eastern and down east and southern sections of Maine. So let's break this down. Let's look at the latest HRRR model, see what it shows here. And, we'll take a look at kind of what's going on right now. You got snow being reported in Scranton. We're looking at the radar here in Mount Holly, New Jersey, which, doesn't cover a lot of areas. But, you got some snow being reported just south of Old Worcester out here. So, I don't know. Why does it do that on radar scope? Here we go. So we're a little bit zoomed in. So this is all rain down here. New York City, all rain. Atlantic City, rain. Pretty much all rain for most of New Jersey unless you get up here to northern New Jersey where you got some hills and higher elevations and it's probably snowing. But you got snow all the way up here in central New York State. So this is moving in. It's moving in right now, but it really cranks up later this evening. So we'll see what happens here as we're moving here in time. Let's get this in motion. We're getting into about midday at this point, early afternoon. It's still raining potentially in like Albany, the Valley regions, all the way up the Hudson Valley. Still raining in New York City. Raining for most of New Jersey, most of Connecticut, unless you're up here in these Litchfield Hills area, these higher elevation. The Berkshires, it's starting to snow. I think this remains snow throughout the entirety of the event. That's why you have concrete winter storm warnings up in these areas. You keep this rolling here. We're getting into this afternoon. At this point, we're around 6, 7 p.m. Snowing like crazy in the Catskills and the Poconos. The HRRR model has you all rain at this point here in northern New Jersey. And the reason it's snowing in some of these sections right now is might switch to rain is because the system really hasn't cranked up yet. It hasn't really brought its own cold air down. So, once you get into later this evening, cold air gets more into the picture, and these areas will switch mainly to snow. But heavy rain here in Connecticut, Long Island. When we start to get into the middle of the night tonight, this is when you get to that heavy, wet snow. Albany, you're switching all to heavy snow. Berkshires, the Worcester Hills, Poconos, it's still snowing, but there's going to be a sharp cutoff somewhere here in northeast Pennsylvania. It's snowing pretty good from Syracuse to Binghamton, especially the eastern Finger Lakes areas. Snowing, I think you're going to get hit really hard here in southern Vermont and certainly southern New Hampshire, especially I would say probably southwest New Hampshire will get hit really hard with this. The moisture continues to funnel in. It's still raining in Boston, but you're starting to get some dynamic cooling here south of Boston based off the NAM, where you're getting into about 7 a.m. at this point. But one thing, you look in Connecticut, I think it's snowing right here where you show rain. But you look at Connecticut, if you're hugging the coast, you're still raining. You get about 30 miles inland, and it's heavy, wet snow. You're trying to switch to snow in New York City at this point. Okay? And then, as this thing spins, you get moisture that tries to wrap back this way, and this is when snow could pick back up for Watertown, Syracuse, Binghamton, the Poconos again, and you're starting to get, later in the morning hours. This is when you could get some heavy, wet snow into New York City sometime tomorrow morning. The HRRR model has you switching to snow tomorrow morning for Boston, while some of the global models, some of these other models, a little bit later, maybe into the early afternoons Tuesday morning. So that's a big question here, but it's still snowing. But one thing with Boston here is it has the low pressure getting very close to Boston. When you get really close to that low pressure, one, it brings more warm air in. Two, the precipitation begins to get cut off due to what we call a dry slot. You see all this area way out here in the Atlantic? And it's not even way out here. You look at Cape Cod where it's not doing anything, and it's unloading here just west of you guys. When you're right here in the center of low pressure, you struggle to get precipitation. It's kind of like the center of a hurricane. Right in the center of the low pressure, you got lack of precipitation. And sometimes with the stronger hurricanes, you get an all-out clearing around the low pressure. But, if you're outside this area, look at this huge band of snow getting thrown into the coastal regions of Maine. I think that this could be a substantial band of snow that gets pushed into Maine late tomorrow morning, early tomorrow afternoon. But one thing you watch for here, check this out, guys. Early tomorrow afternoon, it's switching to heavy, wet snow in areas of Long Island, New York City, central to northern New Jersey. And this is when you'll have a chance to get snow tomorrow in New York City. And then you just got this weird mixing going on here. That's possible. But one thing you watch for, I'm telling you, is the low pressure based off the HRRR model moves fully into Boston. So you get dry slotted. So your snow totals get dramatically reduced. Someone is going to get gypped who's expecting a lot of snow. You're going to have this scenario. Then you're going to have something that we call subsidence, basically where you have two big bands. One band just west of the low pressure, northwest, and then you got one kind of band that's just kind of spinning, kind of just kicking off in one spot. And there's going to be an area between those two bands that's going to set up where you're going to get less snow. It's going to happen to somebody. Somebody's going to be pissed off. We already know that's going to happen. But it's just the way the ball rolls sometimes. So we keep this going. We're getting all the way into late tomorrow night around midnight. You're still dealing with lingering kind of snow squally weather here. And then it starts to, simmer down somewhat as we get into late tomorrow night. NAM is more so just a wallop of a storm, moves it in. We get into, tonight, late tonight, in the wee hour, about 2 a.m., snowing like crazy. And these higher elevations of Mass, Connecticut, obviously Vermont, New Hampshire, and New York State. And then we're getting to Tuesday morning. It's still raining in Boston, trying to snow in New York City at this point off the NAM. Bam, quickly switches to snow late morning in Boston. Same thing with New York City. All of southern New England except Cape Cod, Nantucket, Martha's Vineyard is snowing. It is snowing like crazy. The NAM is a big hit for Boston. Basically all the New England states. It's snowing back here in New York City, Long Island. It's snowing still in New York City. And then, it finally begins to head out as we get into Wednesday morning, but it's still snowing in a lot of the inland areas. And I would say it doesn't fully end until late Wednesday night. So I want to show you the Euro. The Euro shows a weird scenario where it's having what we call convective feedback issues, meaning it's trying to show like dual low pressures. So you get this in, we're getting into, 2 a.m. tonight, snowing heavily here in the Berkshires, the Worcester Hills, the Catskills, Litchfield Hills, snowing very heavy in these areas. Switches of snow even in these lower elevations that is outside these hilly and mountainous regions. All rain for Boston, all rain for New York City, and all in this entire coastal region right into here. We're getting into Tuesday morning, still kind of the same deal. But then we get into about early afternoon Tuesday. This is when you switch to some heavy snow in Boston. But you see this low pressure here, and then you see this weird dry slot here. It's trying to show dual low pressures. It's trying to show one right over Long Island, Connecticut, things like that. That would bring less snow, less precipitation into these regions, less of a chance for substantial snow in these regions right here. But whoever's outside those regions, it's unloading precipitation, whether it's rain or snow. In this case, it would be snow. Boston, Tuesday afternoon off the Euro, snowing very heavily. And it continues for several hours. I would say Boston is going to be kind of a city where half the storm might be rain, but about 55 to maybe 60% of the storm where it's snowing, it's going to snow heavily. Very, very heavy. So don't think if you're in Boston, it's going to snow the entire event. This is going to be one of those events where it starts off as rain for a long period of time. So still snowing, and then it lets off sometime Wednesday afternoon. All right, one thing I want to mention is kind of that band that I'm talking about. So we'll look at 700 millibars, which is pretty high up in the atmosphere. Definitely not that 850 range. It's higher than that, a few miles up in the atmosphere. Here comes the low pressure. Here comes that intense band. We call this frontogenesis, basically where the column is saturated and it snows very heavily. So this moves in. This is the initial huge band that I've been talking about that's going to come up Tuesday morning and Tuesday afternoon and really slam the coastal regions of Maine. Here's an intense band right into here too. Okay, as we're getting into Tuesday early afternoon, there's going to be some kind of middle ground where somewhere maybe like the Worcester area, Worcester Hills, I'm trying, guys. Might get in between these bands and might get less snows. And wherever this pivots and kind of sits around, might have kind of a bust low kind of scenario. We'll see what happens, but we keep this going here. This is pushing over Vermont, New Hampshire, and I really think there's going to be an intense band right into here of snow, and this could be right over Boston. In fact, I know at least it's going to hit Boston. Does it sit over Boston? Wherever this intense banding right here sits over, that's where you'll jackpot. Okay, so snow, we're not going to get quite as detailed as we did in last night's video, but this is snow. I mean, look, the Finger Lakes is going to get over a half a foot of snow. Rochester, you've had the potential to see 4 to 5, 6 inches of snow. Syracuse could get a foot of snow. Watertown, same kind of deal. Binghamton, over a foot of snow. Scranton could get 8 to 12 inches of snow. The Poconos, same kind of deal. But you see this whiter color right here in the Catskills, the mountainous regions. 2.5 feet of snow is possible. Albany going for around, I would say 10 to 14 inches of snow. We'll go a little bit further south into the New York City area, northern New Jersey. Once you get into that region, I think that's where you stand the best chance to see over a half a foot of snow or more. But look at Mount Pocono, 1.5 feet of snow is possible, is likely. But New York City, Long Island, this is a tough forecast. I would stick to your locals. I know that people have whatever they want to say about the locals. But 1 to 2 inches of snow, I think, is a good forecast for these areas. And now, if you bust high and get more, consider it a win. I really do. But if you don't get hardly anything, I wouldn't be surprised either. This is a tough area, but I think a middle ground of maybe 1 to 2 inches of snow, a slushy 1 to 2 inches of snow is good. But if you could get that backside banding all the way to New York City, you could get more than forecast. You focus in on this region, I think southern Vermont into western Mass will be a jackpot area, especially if this low pressure keeps trending further west. That will begin to take Boston out of some of these hefty accumulations, which will upset a lot of people. But if this continues to kind of tick west today with guidance, which expect a lot of big changes during the day today with snowfall accumulations, I would expect, especially along these regions. But, southern Vermont is going to get slammed with 2 feet of snow. Somebody is. Once you get into central Vermont, you get into that 8 to 12 inch range. But someone right between here, the Worcester Hills and Berkshires, you might not get as much, maybe 4 to 6 inches of snow. And like I said, you're hugging the coastal regions of Connecticut. You might not get much at all, but you get just inland. You start to get into that 3 to 8 inch range, which I know is a huge range, but it's a tough one, guys. It really is. We zoom into the Boston area. They're going for around 3 to 5 inches of snow right now. That's definitely dropped off from the 8 to 12 we talked about last night. But you go just inland, you start to get to that 6 to 8, and then that 8 to 12 inch range. The hills right into here, certainly going to have a good shot to get over a foot of snow. Southern New Hampshire, widespread 10 to 15 inches of snow. You get up to Maine, nothing's really changed with Maine. I think you'll get a lot of your snow off this huge band that moves through. And I think if you're in kind of the southern regions of Maine, I would say 8 to 12 inches of snow is a good forecast for you folks in this region right in here. The down east areas of Maine, maybe 6 to 10 inches of snow. You get a little bit further north where you're not dealing with any temperature issues. I would say anywhere from 5 to 8 to maybe 9 inches of snow is possible. Winds, going to be a big deal. They'll start to pick up later this afternoon. I think the winds will really pick up here in the mid-Atlantic region where Washington, D.C. later tonight, certainly fasten things down here in the Delmarva, the mid-Atlantic region, Washington, D.C., Baltimore. Winds will probably gust for a period, 30, maybe 35 miles per hour. And then we're getting into southern New England, guys, and this is when, we're getting into Tuesday morning. 30 to 40 mile per hour wind gusts are possible here in Boston, southeast Mass, Cape Cod, certainly. You're getting kind of windy here and just all of the interior northeast and coastal areas of the northeast. But right as you begin to switch to snow in some of these sections right here, and let's look at southern New England here. Right as you're switching to snow, guys, this is when the winds could really pick up for you guys. So I would say you're switching to snow for everybody in this region right here. If you're not already snowing initially, this is when you're going to have brief blizzard conditions right into here. Right when it's switching to snow, Heavy wet snow falling, winds gusting to 30 to as much as 50 miles per hour in the southern sections of Maine, New Hampshire, and eastern Mass. Okay, so that's when it could get pretty dicey in these regions. You go up to Maine also, and with this band that really pushes in, I mean, here's the band right here. I mean, you got hurricane force winds just off the coastline, but luckily these will kind of lessen up. But we're getting into early afternoon. This band pushes through, and it could get quite intense with this band of snow that moves through from the down east areas of Maine to the southern areas of Maine. This moves in 30 to as much as 50 mile per hour wind gusts associated with this band that moves through and makes it all the way up in the northern sections of Maine. So that's the update on the nor'easter. Hope that helps you folks. Let's talk about the rest of the country. Well, the parts of the country we cover for today. I think today we could have a severe thunderstorm risk. I mean, we're probably going to get some strong storms firing up here in the next couple hours in central Florida. And there will be a low-end tornado threat today. So please be aware, Orlando, if you're doing any vacationing down here in Disney World, Tampa Bay, Orlando, Daytona Beach, there will be some storms throughout the morning. And then they will kind of shift a little bit further south this afternoon and get down here in more southern sections of Florida this evening. Okay, so be aware of that. But check this out. You got some snow showers drifting through Kentucky, West Virginia. Some snow showers showing up here in northeast sections of Tennessee. I think the Cumberland Plateau could get some snow shower activity later tonight. Certainly likely, I think. The north central U.S., quiet day. You might have an area of precipitation develops early this afternoon here in the panhandle of Texas and Oklahoma and eastern Oklahoma. This could fall in the form of a little bit of snow. So do not be surprised out here in these sections of western Oklahoma and the eastern panhandle of Texas if you see a little bit of snow flying around. We get into this evening. An area of precipitation will develop. Maybe a little bit of freezing drizzle, freezing rain might fall again in the same areas that might see a little bit of snow a little bit early this afternoon. But we'll talk more on this because it still has some lingering precipitation a little bit later tonight. But for my folks up here in the north central U.S., this lingering energy will fly into the Ohio Valley, and we'll get kind of juiced up here. So I think, we're getting into Detroit, Cleveland. I think, as we're getting a little bit later into this morning, early this afternoon, some more snow showers will be flying around Indianapolis, Cincinnati, Dayton, Columbus, Lexington, Kentucky. Some snow shower activity later this afternoon will be, certainly on the increase. And then this will increase also in Illinois, where you guys will have some snow shower activity. They could be, brief, really heavy bursts of snow too. So, don't be surprised by this. If this coats the ground really briefly, it's certainly going to be possible a little bit later today. We'll look a little bit closer to these regions. And like I said, it's going to be some snow shower activity. This is around 4 or 5 p.m. this afternoon. You got bursts of snow everywhere from, the Great Lakes region all the way down into, the mountains of Tennessee and North Carolina and Southwest Virginia into West Virginia. So, this could put a coating on some surfaces, some cold air in place. So, this will continue throughout the overnight hours, and we'll be waking up some flurries flying around in certain sections even tomorrow morning. So, temperatures, 30s for the Ohio Valley, Midwest. You're even going to struggle to get out the 30s a day in the Mid-South, but I think most people will get into the 40s. Very chilly day, even for areas of the Deep South. Chilly day in the Carolinas for mid-March standards. Nothing totally unusual, but it will be much chillier compared to what we saw this time last week. But the Great Lakes region, the upper Midwest, and the northern plains here, well below freezing and pretty warm out ahead of our nor'easter. Above freezing all the way up here in Maine and southeast Canada. Hey, there's a big storm coming. Don't let this confuse you. Our next big topic here is probably going to be this storm. Here it comes. We're getting into Thursday morning. A big-time snowstorm possible here in areas of Nebraska, and then into Dakotas, and then we're watching Minnesota as we're getting into Thursday afternoon. Minneapolis, northern Wisconsin, the UP of Michigan. This could be a big event for you guys, and we have to watch a threat for severe weather down here. We'll talk about that a little bit. Maybe we can talk on that a little bit later tonight. But we're watching this storm. This could be our next kind of big storm, and then there's some noise showing up here in the south central U.S. early next week, but we're not going to talk on that much right now. But we'll watch this. The GFS certainly has a bigger event. I would say a little bit further south. This would bring a significant winter storm for areas deeper into Nebraska, even all the way into northwest Kansas. This would bring some heavy snow for Colorado, Boulder, eastern Colorado, Denver. The low pressure just goes further south. Therefore, you got a wintry mess showing up here in Omaha, western Iowa. This would be a big winter storm for Minneapolis, and further south in areas in Wisconsin, maybe. But definitely some differences between the Euro and the GFS with this storm system for the middle of the country. We'll talk more on that when we need to. God bless all y'all. Have a great Monday, and I'll talk to you this evening.